I think the left is fundamentally Dionysian or a bacchanal. I think that's the essence of liberalism, in fact, is this notion of getting drunk and losing your identity and flowing into other people and other things and so on. I think that's what the left actually is at its very heart. But I think what we saw like at over the past, well, it's probably longer than a decade, but definitely over the past decade, is a kind of Puritan streak on the left, and Me Too is an expression of this. And I don't want to defend everyone who was accused because I'm sure many of them uh, did in fact engage in brutality and the casting couch and blah blah blah.
If they are
Um,
Jewish, they're guilty. That's kind of, you know.
well, I mean, okay, but you know what I mean. I'm not defending everyone here. What I am defending is the notion that like the boss slapping his secretary on the ass or any sort of interplay in which there's a power dynamic,
Mhm.
someone's above the other person and he or she is on top and therefore it can't be done. It's this weird puritanical energy that you see at the left that is actually kind of anti-left on a way. It
Right.
genuinely is anti-fun and anti-sex, and that's almost from my perspective like the good parts of the left.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't like the right because they're like boring by nature and stuffy and annoying. But
Yeah.
at least if you could count on the left for something, it's a little
Right.
bit of like
No, they're
sex,
not
drugs,
even
and rock
fun.
and
You get
roll, right?
nothing.
But
I know.
but
That's
when
so
you
true.
yeah.
That's why we both get called like feds. I get called a Jewish fed. You get called a glowy. And it's
Right.
I guess it's because we don't really fit into either one. Because I'm not like a trad conservative because that's lame and it's a LARP and it's fake half the time. But then
Yeah.
I'm not like a crazy lefty feminist at the same time. So it is kind of hard being in the middle. That's an odd position to be in. But I think that's where most people, like real people, are. And it's almost like we
Yeah.
don't have any representation for that. It's either losers on the right, or weirdos on the left.
Yes, I basically agree. Yeah, I've never been terribly attracted to the trad stuff. I mean, I get it. I get it,
It's
but
good, but it's fake.
it is fake. Yeah.
It's
I
true.
get their basic point, but and I agree with their basic point, but there is more to life than, resisting temptation.
Yeah, and it doesn't it seem like the people who like try the hardest to be like these pent up people, they end up being the worst. Like sometimes the people that'll preach to me or they sound the most Christian, they end up being the worst kind of people in real life, as opposed to someone who presents themselves as like awful. You end up finding out that they're kind of a better person behind the scenes. So it seems like
Yeah.
that's all part of that whole thing. Like, what are you hiding?
Well, not every anti-gay pastor is homosexual himself.
Right.
However, it does seem to be a rule. So I think there's something there. I guess to be fair to the trads, on the other side of the coin, there are people who don't have a libido or any sort of energy, and I think wagging the finger at everyone is almost their kind of form of will to power. I
Right.
mean, Mencken said that, the definition of a Puritan is someone who imagines that someone somewhere is having fun. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of it. It's like to try to stifle other people who actually have energy and dynamism and to kind of bring them down to their level, which is rather boring, if we're honest.
Right. There's a line I think it's in Tom Jones, the book, and the
Hmm.
guy was talking about how he was like, "Well, basically the people with the most morals are the ones with the least temptations to sin," right? It's the
Hmm.
it's the ones who get no offers who then want to tell you how to be like them. It's just like doesn't make sense, but there's like always an underlying reason for all the puritanicalness. Whereas opposed to
Yes.
somebody more open, somebody who gets more opportunities, they're less like they're actually a better person because they have to overcome more temptations.
Yes. But your chat hates my guts, by the way. I'm
Do
glad
they?
I'm here.
Oh,
I, I, I,
I try not to look at it because they're like it'll distract you. Turn it off. Turn it off. And hey, everybody
I,
in the chat, shut the fuck up. Don't insult my guest.
no, it's fine. I'm used to it.
Hey, it's fair.
It's kind of, it
All is
happens all
fair.
the
All is
time.
fair in love and war. Whenever I'm mentioned anywhere in like on anyone else's post, then I get hated on. So whenever
Yeah.
you come
Oh,
into
look,
my
we have
thing,
some
you get hated
defenders
on.
coming out of the
Yes,
woodwork. All right, that's awesome.
Richard
Okay,
Spencer Draper. Bring your friend.
true. That's no, it's fine. I've been on like who's the Ralph report all the
Oh
time, and
yeah, I've been on his
yeah,
a
the
few times.
chat like passionately hates me, but I keep
That's a
going
tough
back.
crowd.
So
That's a really tough
yes,
crowd.
yes. Oh, I guess this is what I was thinking in terms of morality and temptation and giving in to temptation and so on. Remember this story of Roger Scruton, who's or Scruton, I guess how you pronounce it. He's a great philosopher in England. He's written a huge amount of books, and they're very good and accessible. But anyway, he was invited to this Heritage Foundation discussion, and they were talking about family values, and they basically had six people on the panel, and they were just all reiterating one another. It's like,
Right.
marriage is good, kids are good, put time in kids, don't drink alcohol, kind of thing. And he just got bored because he's an intellectual, and he's like, all right, we someone needs to take a stance that's like mildly controversial, or we're just going to put everyone to sleep. And he
Right.
actually put forth a defense of the mistress as an essential institution for sustaining marriage and the family. And
Mhm.
I think that is actually 100% correct. It's not that everyone needs a mistress, and it's not that that can't lead to some harm. Of course it can, but you can say that about everything. But it's
Right.
that willing to be hypocritical is a way of sustaining the values of civilization. So
Yeah.
it's not that you're in like a polyamorous polycule and you're embracing just being a pervert as your identity, which is obviously awful and stupid, and only ugly people do that kind of stuff
Yeah, it is
to
true.
begin with. Absolutely true. But it's like, okay, you've made a mistake and you're forgiven. That's actually sustaining the institution. Or it's, I'm very unhappy and I need this romantic indulgence on occasion, but by giving in a little bit, you're ultimately sustaining it and not allowing that unhappiness to destroy the institution itself. And
Right.
it's like that kind of non-puritanical thinking. It's because it's dialectical thinking. The mistress sustains the marriage. You
Yeah.
need the opposite to maintain the positive. It's that kind of that kind of thinking has always appealed to me, and I think that's the kind of thinking that the world needs. You need a little
Right.
bit of Dionysus and Apollo to make it work.
Well, that used to be the norm. I mean, in the courts, that used to be like normal. Everybody had the mistress. The wife wasn't interested in the king. The king wasn't interested in her or whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it worked. Maybe that only works amongst like the elites. I don't know how that would work if you're poor. Might
I
not.
basically agree. I think that one of the sad things about the sexual revolution is that it has worked for educated elites and not for the poor. And I
Mhm.
and I think it's actually a terrible thing. Like, you hear these stories. I remember this came out while I think actually right after I left Duke University. There's this girl at Duke, and she like had a spreadsheet of her hookups, and she was showing this to people who had found it. So she was like, it was very anti-life. She was using a quantitative method to address what's truly qualitative, love and so
Yeah.
on. Is awful, in fact, but typical of those types of students. But she was able to swing it in a way. She had this boyfriend and that one, and this she cheated on him and not him. Blah, blah, blah. But she was able to swing it precisely because she was so high functional. But when you bring these types of ideas to the lower classes, I do think it just gets out of control and is much more likely to be life destroying, because a lot
Right.
of people who are functional or educated, they'll get their life together when they need to, or they'll
Yeah.
make a mistake and be forgiven, and it's okay. And I think it's much more devastating. I mean, when you see these, I don't know, like whenever you see people who are actually engaged in polyamory, they're like fat and gross and kind of from the lower orders of
Right.
society, and it's almost like they actually believe the ideology, and they can't see that contradiction within it, where you can have a mistress, you can you can give in to indulge a temptation, you can indulge a little bit but not too much, and you have to find that balance in your life. I don't think dumber people can really understand that. And they're by their very nature, they're sort of black and white thinkers, and it's like all in. Either I'm going to be a monk or I'm going to be a polycule, you know, freak, and
Right.
that's not the idea. So I
Yeah.
don't have an answer outside of maybe some people need more Puritanism, and other people need a lot less of it.